Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Mark Christensen. I'm happy to be with you. Hey, and thank you so much, those that have adjusted from Friday. Travel, the plane that I was on actually was delayed and stranded, I guess you could say, on a tarmac for some time, waiting because of a bomb threat at the destination airport that I was intended to fly to. So we needed to adjust to today, and my team member and counterpart, Julia Weaver, is based in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and wouldn't you know it, she too, the internet's down where she is today, storms and tornadoes in Myrtle Beach, so we wish her well and safe. We are going to proceed, though, with this webinar, and it will be me running solo here, but I think we can pull it off. All right, so thank you for being on here. This will be recorded as well. This topic is so important to me, so I'm happy that I have the opportunity to share it with you. We're titling it Leadership 2024 because what I want to share with you are some of the trends that we see happening, and also then focus in on one very important trend that is emerging, and I see it as so valuable and so important for organizations large and small, public, private, almost any sector, any vertical that you happen to work in. Okay, so just by way of introduction, for those that don't know me, my name is Mark Christensen. Again, I'm the founder of Learning Point Group, which has been around for 35 years now, helping organizations develop the leadership capacity and development leadership talent within their organization. And for the past few years, about 3 or 4 years, I have had the privilege and opportunity to work and partner with the Blanchard organization, which is a wonderful organization. I've been loving the work that I do with them, and my role and the opportunities that I have to work with them. And so one of the things at Blanchard that is very impressive to me, and I wanted to share it with you, is the research team at Blanchard. We have an entire team at Blanchard. Blanchard's based in Escondido, California, and they are constantly looking, assessing, surveying, and doing research, both direct research, but also summarizing research that's been done by others regarding leadership and trends in leadership and effectiveness of different kinds of approaches to leadership. And each year they have been putting out the results of a survey that they do that they call HR and L&D Trend Survey. And so what I've included here is the QR code for that survey, so that you can go in and get a report on some of the trends that they have found based on the research that they have done. All right. And I want to highlight just a few things, but I don't want to get into the details of that. If you'd like to see that, then please use that QR code. It's free information for sure. They want to provide it to you. But some of the things that are highlights, just for you to keep you aware of, and you're probably already aware of it, so it might affirm what you already are seeing. But one big one is the use of artificial intelligence, AI, and just the whole emergence of that, and how that is really going to facilitate in many ways leadership and leadership development, and some of the messaging, some of the communication, some of the collaboration that can happen for leaders within the organizations that they work with, right? So for the most part, it's a good thing, but it's also somewhat of a concern, somewhat of a scary thing for some of us. And one big concern for those that are in the field of consultancy and training and intellectual property is to be careful with AI, right? Because if you use any of the tools that are out there to have AI help you develop anything, then more than likely it's going to draw on stuff that is protected, intellectual property that is protected, and AI doesn't necessarily filter that. And so one caution is just make sure that what you're using, you're safe from a legal standpoint or from an ethical standpoint to use. That's one caution, but the rest of it is, there's a lot of really good advantages to the AI thing as well, okay? The other area that, and I actually want to dive into this area a little bit more, is the involvement, the trend for senior leaders to be even more involved and to take ownership more for the leadership development that's happening within their organization. So the role of an L&D director, or officer, or training and development, learning and development, that role isn't diminishing, it's actually expanding, but it's doing, for many organizations, doing it in unison with senior leadership. So senior leadership is recognizing the need to strategically grow leadership talent throughout the organization. We're going to be talking more about that on this webinar. Another area is blended development. Hey, we've been through the pandemic. We've learned how to use virtual tools to meet virtually, to learn virtually, and there's a lot of technology outside of AI that has also developed in the past 3 or 4 years. And even though blended learning and blended development was a thing prior to the pandemic, we've raised the bar. We've raised our capacity as an industry and within organizations to actually take advantage of some of the real benefits that can come from blended development. And by blended development, I mean a combination of face-to-face learning with virtual learning, and with the idea that really face-to-face classroom and virtual sessions is part of the learning experience. But think of it as a 360 total learning experience, where really where it needs to happen most is on the job. The real learning happens on the job, and the blended learning journey, oftentimes it's called the learning journey, is a way to enhance a leader's learning that needs to happen every day within the context of their everyday role. And so the last thing that I want to mention in terms of trends is the emerging mindset and priority towards a thriving workplace. That organizations are beginning to recognize that for us to be successful, we need to put time and attention towards nurturing and creating a thriving workplace. And so, yeah, if you want, use that QR code, click on that to download that report. I think you'll find it to be a valuable information for you. And so with that, I want to get into the main topic of today. So think about leadership, strategically growing leadership capacity within an organization. And I want to start with this key question. All right. Now, on this webinar, we don't have it's a webinar type situation here. We don't have the opportunity to have interaction, unfortunately, but answer this question for yourself, okay? What are the outcomes of effective leadership? How would you answer that? What is the actual product? If effective leadership is in place, then what happens as a result of that, right? If we go into a sandwich shop and we place an order, we know what the outcome is going to be. We expect the outcome to be consistent with what our order was. When we think about leadership and effective leadership, what do we expect the product of that to be? What would you say? What is that? What are the outcomes of effective leadership? How would you sum that up? All right. So you can come up with your own answer. I'm going to offer to you my answer, the two things that I think effective leadership should provide. The first one is effective leadership absolutely should provide an increase in operating results. All right. Within businesses, within organizations, effective leadership should mean that the organization as a whole, or any subsection of the organization, is able to provide and create the result that it's expected to create. That effective leadership is moving the organization towards those desired results, that mission, that objective. It doesn't matter whether it's a public organization, it could be a government agency, or it could be a private organization. Effective leadership needs to help the organization accomplish those results. And when I think about results, I think about safety, quality, productivity, cost reduction, and morale. Safety, quality, productivity, cost cost reduction, and morale. All right. Those are the 5 areas. There may be others too, but those are 5 really basic, common areas where results are necessary. Operating results within an organization. How you measure those may change from one place to another, but those are basically the foundation for operating results. The second thing that effective leadership should do is nurture and enhance the desired culture, right? So effective leadership is helping the organization nurture and protect and enhance the desired culture. And that culture should then also facilitate the cause of the organization towards those desired results. So the two work hand in hand. And in many respects, culture and brand, the brand of the organization, they're one and the same as well. All right. And so effective leadership should accomplish those things. All right. So here are some more questions for you. So do kind of I'm going to do like a agree, disagree set of questions for you. So determine for yourself whether you agree or disagree with the following statements. Okay. Statement number 1, leadership transcends position. Do you agree with that or do you disagree with that? Leadership transcends position. It's not about the position. Leadership is an influence, right? It's a dynamic within an organization that hopefully brings effective leadership, brings about an increase in results and an increase in or an enhancement of the culture. And so if a person's in a certain position of leadership, if they're in a formal leadership position, then we would expect them to provide leadership, right? But on to statement number 2, some of the most important leadership will come from leaders not in formal leadership positions. Do you agree with that, right? So leadership isn't necessarily about the position, although if you're in a formal leadership position, we expect leadership from you. However, also, can you think of individuals that you work with that are not in formal leadership positions, but provide leadership influence every day? All right. Number 3, leadership is a team endeavor. Okay. And that's going to be kind of central to my message on this webinar today, is that leadership is more than just the individual influence. Hopefully you agree with this statement. It is a team endeavor. It's the combined influence of individuals that are providing leadership that make the difference in terms of increasing those operating results and enhancing the culture of the organization. And then number 4, this one is for you to answer for your organization. Think about where you work. Think about your organization. Is leadership a strategic priority for your organization? Now, if for whatever reason, your organization is part of the 35% that actually budgets for leadership development, they allow for classes, they allow for training to happen, they allow for people to go to a leadership workshop or whatever, then I guess you could consider that to be that your organization makes leadership development a strategic priority. And I'm looking beyond that, right? So if leadership is a strategic priority in your organization, then it could possibly mean that senior leadership sees leadership development strategically, just as they do product development or market share or logistics management or financial, their financial strategy. All of those things are really, really important. And is leadership and strategically growing the capacity of leadership throughout your organization also a strategic priority? That's what that question's all about. All right. All right. So good. Here's another question for you. Regardless of how you answered the previous questions, agree, disagree. How about this one? What role do you play? What is your role? What's the difference that you can make within your organization when it comes to enhancing or moving forward the strategic development of leaders throughout your organization? Be thinking about that one as well, okay? So, because you don't have to be at the top of the organization for that to happen, even though a portion of my message here is that those at the top of the organization should have a certain portion of their mind share, what they focus on, is strategically focused on growing leadership throughout the organization. So here's the reality. Here's what we're finding. We're finding that more and more management teams, leadership teams within organizations are seeing things this way. Leadership truly is a team effort. It's not the influence of just one, but of many leaders within the organization. And the role of senior leaders is essential to that happening, although perhaps in different ways different than what we might expect. And I'm going to point out some of those differences here. So, you know, senior leaders saying and proclaiming, yes, this is important, and so we're going to budget for it. That's awesome. That's great. However, their involvement and their influence, the leverage or the influence that they can have is so much greater than that. Okay. And so I want to point out some of the ways that that can happen here. And I want to start by telling you a personal story, and I hope that's okay. But I'm going to share with you a recent experience that I had where I saw a high-performing organization actually do life-changing work in a way that touched me personally. All right. So this is a personal story. This woman over here, her name is Lisa. She's my wife. Okay. So 3.5 years ago, we discovered that Lisa was diagnosed with an incurable liver disease. The only way that she could find a cure to this is to get a liver transplant, which are difficult to get, okay? And so this disease that she had was a disease that most people get. If they get it in their 20s, and then it slowly progresses over time. And this was not the case with her. If she had it, we didn't know she had it. She was diagnosed with it, and then she very progressively, very aggressively started to decline. So we were working against time, and we were working against a lot of other variables. And we so appreciate the team, the transplant team at the Intermountain Healthcare facility system within the state of Utah, and her doctor, Dr. Gilroy, for the amazing work that they did. And so this is actually a successful story. But during that journey, about a 6-month journey, watching her, you know, get a decline daily was not fun, right? And so there are a lot of tests, a lot of procedures, a lot of admission in the hospital. And it was a very uncertain time, very scary time for us. And this last image over here to the far right was the morning after she learned that there was a compatible deceased liver donor opportunity for her. And she's being wheeled down the hallway here to her surgery. And so this was me taking the picture, but if you can imagine, I know we're not the only person that's been through this kind of situation, right? How uncertain that is and how scary that is. And so she had the surgery through the night, and then the next morning, guess what? Successful surgery. Everything went well. That center picture is of her after her surgery with her surgeon. An amazing guy, right? So this guy who did the surgery immediately became a hero. He was on top of his game. We can't thank him enough. You know, he was amazing. And so over here, the far right, that's us with our daughter as she was finally released from the hospital a few weeks after her surgery, and everything was great. And we were so happy, right? It was a happy time. We felt the sense of relief. And we could not stop thanking her surgeon here. This wasn't Dr. Gilroy. This was Dr. Gagnon, who actually performed the surgery. We got to know him well. He did the surgery, and he was a hero. And so as we were thanking him again and again for what he did, as we were parting ways, he said, you know what? I'm glad that this worked out the way that it did. But you need to understand something. 500 people needed to be at the top of their game specifically for Lisa's case in order for that to happen successfully. All right, top of their game. We cannot, there's a very small margin for error, and it takes leadership from many. It takes many to be at the top of the game, and all of it boils down to leadership. He used the word leadership, right? And so that caught my attention. And when he said 500, those are 500 people that needed to get it right. They needed to have that discretionary commitment to get it right for specifically for Lisa's case, from those that were analyzing blood to those that were drawing blood to those that were doing endoscopies and everything else that goes in between. All of that had to work in unison at a high level in order for this to be accomplished. And they do this time and time again. This particular unit does 85 of these kinds of surgeries each year. And I actually happen to be good friends with the former president of Intermountain Healthcare System, the hospital system, the primary hospital system in Utah. And so Larry, actually, he's an associate of ours within Learning Point now. And he said to me, he obviously wasn't involved there when Lisa was going through this, but he said to me, he said, you know, had I been president at the time of Lisa's surgery in the moment, there would have been nothing that I could have done to impact those results. You know, my work was done years prior to that. And so that's part of my point here, is that senior leaders in the moment, the leadership that's needed for this to happen isn't necessarily the leadership that comes from above, from the senior levels of the organization. It needs to come from others, right? And I want to point that out and illustrate that a little bit more as we go through this. But I'd like for you to think for a moment, how does leadership development actually happen within your organization? Okay, or within any organization, based on what you know, based on what you've experienced, how does leadership development actually really happen? Does it really happen in the classroom? You know, does it really happen because of a book that's read? Does it really happen because of a webinar or a virtual session that someone might attend to? Okay, and my proposition is no. And I like to call it the guppy pond analogy, all right? And so the idea here is that oftentimes what we do is we take a guppy out of a pond that has an existing condition to it. It may be a dirty pond, it may be an inconsistent pond, whatever it is. We send them to training, and then we put them right back into the dirty pond, right? Or whatever the condition is, but we haven't done anything to the pond. And oftentimes this is an individual experience where that one person, that one leader, is going to receive some sort of development and it's in separation from the actual organization. And so part of the point here is, what if leadership development actually happened in the pond? It happened by strategy. And not only are we working on one guppy or maybe a group of guppies at a time, or fish, or leaders in this case, we're working on the entire organization. We're creating a new organization, and that is part of the leadership development that has to happen. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but strategic leadership development would be what happens inside the ecosystem of those leaders, not necessarily in a classroom. And there's certain systems that need to be in place. And I want to just introduce those systems. This is based on our opinion, the systems that need to be in place for this to happen. Okay, the first one is connection. Are the right systems in place within the ecosystem, within the organization, for leaders to connect with each other, to make that connection to each other, to be connected to each other, to have that esteem and that relationship with each other? And the next system has to do with what we call the clarity system, the systems that actually provide for clarity of vision, mission, goals, responsibilities, role expectations, and so forth. The third is that of collaboration. Are there systems in place that enable leaders to collaborate with each other? The collaboration that they have together, that they experience together, is really leadership. Leadership at its most fundamental level is that leadership that happens when leaders within the organization have the opportunity to collaborate with it, that's communication, and it's also teamwork, right, on things that matter. And then the fourth one is that of capacity building. So that does have to do with skill enhancement, skill development, leadership training, context training, leadership within the organization, of how it should work within the organization. All of that is capacity building, right? And then the fifth one is consistency. Are the systems in place for these leaders to provide the consistent messaging, the consistent interpretation of where we're at, the consistent application of principles and policies and protocols and processes within the organization. So these 5 systems are the fundamental gears that make strategic leadership development happen, in our opinion, within an organization, so that the true development is happening not in a classroom, although classroom training is important. It's happening in the context of their everyday work as a leader within the context of their organization. Connection, clarity, collaboration, capacity, and consistency. All right, so have you ever noticed, maybe you've noticed this, maybe you've seen videos about this, where schools of fish, they know how to stay together. And actually, there's been studies on this. They call it emergence theory, where those fish, it's in their DNA to respond to each other. And so they know to keep themselves apart a certain amount of like 4 inches apart, but yet still respond. If one moves, then they all have this sense of moving. And so, and in doing that, they actually form a bigger, for, I guess part of this is for, the threat of predators. They form this bigger appearance, this bigger image. They're stronger together, right? But they also stay together. It's built into their DNA. And that's sort of like what I'm thinking happens or should happen with organizations as well. What if that culture included within that culture this leadership DNA, where we are united, we're individual, we have distinct roles, which may be different than these fish, but we function, we swim together, we're united in how we do that. And that happens because it happens best when senior leadership is taking a conscious and strategic look at leadership development on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so what does it take? From your experience, what does it take to tap into the entire leadership talent of your organization? Think about that for a minute. Is your organization really tapping into all of the talent, all of the leadership potential that is there? And by talent and leadership potential, I'm certainly talking about what resides within each individual, but that's only a portion of the game. The other portion is what happens is the talent and the potential that happens between those individuals, leaders as well, all right? And so one of the things that we've learned and we're seeing, and we're excited to be working with organizations on this whole area of how senior leadership teams can, within all of their busy, stuff that they have going on, they can also they can own strategically growing leadership within their organization. And here are the 3 priorities that we have found to be important for a senior leadership team. The first one is to grow individually as a senior leader. So make the commitment to be on top of your game, to grow yourself as a leader in the context of what you're dealing with today. So if you took, and developed leadership, if you were focused on that, maybe you took a class 10 years ago or whatever it might be, that may not be enough, because for one, skills change, but for 2, what you're dealing with today is probably different than what you were dealing with 10 years ago. So grow as a senior leader, and then help to grow your senior leadership team. Be ready to grow that senior leadership team and be part of that team. Take ownership for the strength of that team as well. So a senior leadership team that's united, that they lead as one, they lead with one vision, one message, one method. They're united in how they lead their organization. And then number 3 is strategically grow as a leadership team, strategically grow leadership throughout the organization. That is one of the primary pieces of work of a senior leadership team, is to grow that leadership throughout the organization. That this should not be considered tangential, right? It's not an extra thing that we do. It is part of the integral part of what we do within our organization. So I want to take a minute just to share with you maybe a little bit more detail on that role of a senior leader. Now, this could be the leader of the senior leadership team. So it could be the general manager, it could be an executive director, it could be the CEO, or it could be even a VP over a certain portion of the organization, or it could be a member of that senior leadership team. The first thing is to know who you are and what you stand for. So do the work individually as you're doing this other work with your team by first re-clarifying and reconnecting with who you are and what you stand for. That's your leadership philosophy, or it's your leadership proclamation. And there's tools that can help a senior leader to do that. The second one is to clarify and embrace your current call to lead. So take a look specifically at the opportunity that's facing you right now to lead. What is needed by you? What kind of leadership is needed? What is the calling that you have to lead right now within your role, given the context of your organization, what your organization's facing, and the people that you have the privilege to lead? Taking all of that into consideration, clarify, connect with, and embrace your current role, your current call to lead. And then number three is to help focus and unify your team. So your most important team is the team that makes up the senior leadership team that you're a part of, okay? That, if that's in place, if that's working strong, then the function that you're over, which might be slightly different, the function that you're over as a member of that senior leadership team will also take care of itself. But see yourself as a part of that senior leadership team and help to focus and unify your team. Take ownership for the development of your team. And then number four is help your team strategically grow leadership throughout the organization. So again, part of your important work as a senior leadership team is to strategically grow leadership throughout your organization, all right? Now, how about the senior leadership team? Work on yourself, but then also help grow that team. And so what does the senior leadership team need to do? Well, first of all, they need to spend time with each other to clarify and articulate and actually declare verbally, explicitly to each other why they exist. What's the why for our team? Are we simply a collection of department heads, or do we actually really see that there's value that we can create as a senior leadership team? Get clear on the why. The second thing is to create a charter for your senior leadership team. It's not a charter for the organization. It is a charter that actually defines the purpose, the goals, the roles, and the agreements of the senior leadership team. What is the valuable work that senior leadership team does that's unique to them, that no one else can do but them? You as a senior leadership team, that is your unique purpose and opportunity. And then learn to lead as one. Talk about it, learn about it. Find examples of senior leadership teams that truly learn as one. They're not just a collection of department heads again, they actually work together. They create common messaging. They have a one vision, one mind, one message to their organization. They're truly leading as one. And so one individual might be over finance and someone else might be over operations or production or whatever it might be. Fine, they lead that portion. That's part of their individual roles and responsibilities. But then they also have this primary role to together as a leadership team lead the entire organization together. And part of that important work is to strategically grow leadership throughout the organization. Number four is they need to think and interact strategically. Not just transactionally, but strategically. There's a difference between transactional thinking and transactional communication and strategic or transformational type thinking. And I'd like to explore that with you a little bit further here in just a moment. And then number five is to, and I've mentioned this already, strategically grow leadership throughout the organization. That one of the most important and valuable things you can do as a senior leadership team is make leadership development, strategic leadership development, a priority in your discussions, in your meetings, in your work as a leadership team, all right? So I want to talk for a minute about this idea of thinking and talking strategically with each other as opposed to thinking and talking transactionally with each other, right? So think of 4 different levels of communication within a leadership team. And the bottom level here would be the one that gives you really the least amount of return. All right. So you want to increase the amount of return that you get from the type of interaction and thinking that you do as a leadership team. And so level one would be where the topic that you're discussing is transactional or operational in nature. Maybe it has to do with scheduling. Maybe it has to do with logistics. Maybe it has to do with technology or product, product knowledge or product understanding. It could have to do with market share even, but it's kind of transactional, operational in nature. And it is that grouping, that category of topics, by the way, is the type of topic that most leaders are very comfortable talking about. Why? Because we're used to talking about it, right? So what's on your schedule? Are we going to get the product out the door on time? Output, production. Those are transactional topics for the most part. So when we discuss those things, they may be important to talk about, and we discuss them with a transactional mindset, then that might be important, but that's the lowest level of return that we could expect, right? We're talking about transactional things and we're doing it with a transactional mindset. The next topic or the next level would be to talk about strategic topics, but to do it with a transactional mindset. That's a little bit better, but not a lot better, all right? And by strategic topics, that might include things like, we're talking about the future, we're talking about cultural development, we talk about leadership development, we're talking about 5 years out, 10 years out. We're talking about transforming the organization, but our mindset still is on transactional type attitude and spirit, right? Logistics, numbers, and so forth, analytical. We're not allowing ourselves to actually reach that higher level of transformational conversation that can happen. And in our experience, moving to that next level where you are talking about things with a strategic mindset is a little bit foreign sometimes for certain management teams and certain leadership teams. So level 3 is we talk about transactional topics, but we do so with a strategic mindset, which is very, very possible, right? So even when we're talking about logistics and we're talking about scheduling or whatever it might be, whatever those operational topics are, we are allowing ourselves to remember that this is where we're headed. This is the long game. This is what we want to get out of this, okay? That there's more to this. Think of transformational. We're not just working in the organization, we're working on the organization every day. So let's talk about those transactional topics, but let's keep a strategic focus as we're doing that. It's a different kind of conversation. And it leaves the members of the team or the members of that conversation at a different place, a better place than otherwise. And then the last one, of course, is we actually spend time talking about strategic topics, culture and growth and talent growth and other things that you would consider to be transformational in nature. And we do that with a strategic mindset. So the real question is, how often does your leadership team get to levels 3 and 4? And what can you do to help your organization have conversations, to help the members of your team think and talk at levels 3 and 4 and not just at levels 1 and 2, if that makes sense, okay? And so that is the work, that's the true work of a senior leadership team that wants to strategically grow leadership throughout their organization. And so when it comes to, the third area of focus, which is to strategically grow leadership from the top floor to the shop floor throughout the organization, one of the things that we have found is that when senior leadership teams own that process, it actually works so much more effectively, and it's naturally in line with the other priorities of the organization, right? So it's not this separate side thing. It's not tangential. It's actually integrated into the actual functioning of the organization. So the senior leadership team owns the process. They obviously work with professionals who understand leadership and learning, and it's not intended to consume all of their time, but we have found that they can certainly lead it strategically and then lean on those that can support them in doing so. And so in doing that, then they have total alignment throughout the organization on how we are growing our leaders within the organization from what we call baseline to summit. So they are creating clarity around what things look like today. That's the baseline, right? What does our talent look like today? Where are we at with as an organization when it comes to our operating results and our culture today? That's the baseline view. We want to be very clear on what that looks like today, as Jim Collins and his work, Good to Great. That true leaders, they want to know what truth is today. That's the baseline view. And then the summit view is where we're headed. What does it look like at the top of the mountain? What does the summit intended to look like? And we know that vision, the more we can make that vision colorful and tangible for the members of our organization, the more they can embrace it and move towards it. It creates this focus, this energy, and actually this gravitational pull towards that vision. That's what we mean by summit, okay? And then number 3 is that we create a leadership blueprint that the senior leadership team, with the help of those that can help them do this, they actually create a strategic plan, if you will, for leadership development within the organization. We call it a strategic leadership blueprint. And then number 4 is that what they create, the process of growing leaders, is not, quote, off the shelf, but it's also not from scratch. It's somewhere in between. So we're not suggesting that it's off the shelf, which means that the upside to off the shelf is it doesn't take much to create it because we purchase it, right? And it's already built. But the problem with the downside to that is it's not built for your specific organization. It's built generically, right? And so then there's going to be disconnects when it's implemented within your organization. So, and it's not from scratch. The upside to from scratch is that now it's going to fit exactly what your organization needs, right? That's the upside. The downside is that you may never get there. And that's been proven time and time again with organizations, is that we don't have the time, we don't have the resources to develop it from scratch. So the downside is it doesn't get done. The upside is that if it did get done, it would be, consistent with what we need. So it needs to be something in between. And that's where learning point, and that's where Blanchard actually likes to exist too, as trusted advisors, working with you to find that happy medium between off the shelf and from scratch, so that when the leadership system is put in place, it's not a generic system, but it's not also years of development from scratch. But it's definitely the system that has your look on it, your feel on it, your handprints on it as a senior leadership team. It fits within the culture and brand of your organization. And it is strategic in nature. It's not just classes, it's more than that. And so once again, going back to the 5 key systems that are so important to make that happen, that truly do make up strategic leadership development. Those are connection, clarity, collaboration, capacity, and consistency. That in creating this blueprint, you're creating systems that enable leaders in the organization to connect with each other and to stay connected with each other so that they can identify with each other, they connect with the cause and purpose and mission of the organization, and they have that community, they have that rapport, they have that trust with each other. That's the important part of connection. And it needs to come first, actually. So these are actually laid out in somewhat of a sequential order. The next thing that needs to happen is clarity. You're putting in place systems that help bring clarity to the purpose of the organization, the people involved in the organization, the priorities of the organization, the vision of the organization, the policies and procedures and systems and processes that make the organization work. Expectations of a leader are clear. So there's a lot that goes into this idea of clarity that then enables for leadership to thrive within an organization. And then with those 2 building blocks in place, the third one is collaboration. You're putting systems and mechanisms in place that allow for leaders to collaborate with each other and not compete with each other. Even if they're in different departments or different areas, different teams, they're looking first to find ways to collaborate with each other, which means communicate effectively towards common goals and to work as a team in accomplishing what we cannot accomplish individually. And so there's a lot that goes into collaboration. Then the fourth one is actual capacity building, building the skills, building the mindset, the skill set, the tool set of leaders, both individually and within teams and as an organization. And that includes training, it includes curriculum, but it's capacity building and it's curriculum that is designed specifically for that organization. And then the fifth one is consistency, sustainability, that we're building systems and putting things in place so that what we discuss, what we learn, what we decide on actually has some life to it, right? Some shelf life to it, that we sustain it, that it's consistent, right? And the more consistent the culture and the leadership is within an organization, research has shown this to be true, the higher the trust level is, the less turnover there is, right? The higher the discretionary effort is within the organization. So connection, clarity, collaboration, capacity, and consistency are the systems that make up, the building blocks that make up effective strategic leadership. And so that's what I wanted to share with you on this webinar. I would love to discuss this with any of you that would like to dive into this deeper. We can certainly get on a call to do that. These systems actually, as I mentioned earlier, help move an organization from where they are today, the baseline, to the summit. And we do have a process that helps a senior leadership team put in place a blueprint that is specific to their organization that then becomes a strategic plan for leadership development throughout the organization, so that the organization is moving from where they are today, the baseline, to where they want to be tomorrow, the summit. So I appreciate you being on here. Hey, remember that the work of strategic leadership development can happen as you're doing the other work that is so important for you to work in the organization. It should not create extra time. If it does, it's not working correctly. It's not designed correctly. It should be something you do as you're doing your everyday work. And we can show you how that works and show you where it's worked in the past. And so thank you for being on here. I want to spend just another minute highlighting some of the stuff that is coming up at the beginning of next year. We will continue to hold these live webinars. And the next one will be on January 19th, 11 a.m. Pacific. So, please make your way there. You can register for that. Check in with us at learningpointgroup.com if you're not sure how to do that. Many of you are. So we look forward to being with you monthly next year on these webinars. Also, the Smart Pass, some of you already have your Smart Pass for 2024, gives you access to all of our online content at one price of $9.99 for an individual. Many of you have, your organization has a license, a Smart Pass for the organization with a Smart Pass code. And so please get on there and take a look at what you have available to you in 2024. The schedule is published there already and ready for you to sign up for the stuff that is relevant for you. And then something that's new that actually gets at what we discussed, what I discussed today, are these events that we are calling Senior Leader Summits. Now, these are for senior leaders and for senior leadership teams to come together with other senior leaders and other senior leadership teams to go through a 3-day senior leader retreat experience. And we're very excited about holding these in 2024. If this is of interest to you, either for you or for maybe a senior leadership team within your organization, then please reach out to us and we will provide you with the dates and details that are associated with those events. All right, so thank you very much. This is a special time of year. Whatever holidays you experience this time of year, we hope that it's a wonderful time for you to be with friends and family. Thank you for being on here. And you can find this recording on your SmartPass account after today as well. So thank you very much, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.